This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You know, it is possible for Alberta and Ottawa to get along. Real Talkers going, you guys have been gone all weekend. You guys have been away from the mic for a few days in a row, and you're just right back at it, talking about this adversarial relationship between Alberta and Ottawa. But in this edition, this episode of the show, we're going to bring you something different. Markham Hislop, energy and climate journalist behind Energy Media, is going to bring us a different perspective. Markham, if I'm picking up what he's putting down, believes that Alberta and Ottawa could actually get along, could actually work together to benefit each other's bottom line. It's a collective bottom line, isn't it? We're all in this together. We ran an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll just a few days ago. Many of you participated in it. We'll get into the results. Of course, all this talk about Alberta separating from the rest of the country, Alberta becoming a sovereign state, or maybe the 51st state, has a bunch of people wondering what the future is going to look like. Out here on the prairies and across the country, there would be economic implications. There would be a million implications. But attention will focus back on Ottawa this week. As a matter of fact, about 24 hours from the time that we're doing this show, the Prime Minister is expected to swear in a new cabinet. It'll have a bit of a different look. Could be bigger than previous cabinets. Could have different tiers to it. Could look a little bit different than what Canadians are used to. But of course, it's going to get everybody, again, focused or seeking to understand what the Prime Minister's plan and what this minority Liberal government's plan is with the Canadian economy. A big part of that will impact Alberta and, of course, everybody, including Alberta's Premier, telling us this last week, waiting to see what the federal government approach will be to industry, and in particular to that conversation that we have around the economy and the environment. It's been widely acknowledged that the past 10 years or so haven't exactly been fantastic when it comes to the dynamic between the federal government and the provincial government. But regardless of where you live, regardless of where you work, wouldn't it be better if everybody kind of had a collective position on this? Or do I just sound ridiculous? Is that even possible? Markham Hislop says yes. That coming up in 30 seconds. First, we'll let you know that this show is being presented by Alberta's top online real estate school. You can find them at relo.ca, R-E-L-O.ca. That's where better real estate training starts, regardless of where you're at in your career. Heck, you could be helping folks. You could have been working for the last 20 years, helping people buy or sell homes, and all of a sudden you see opportunity in the commercial space and you want to level up. Or maybe it's vice versa. You can choose your course at relo.ca. You'll take a fundamentals course and a practical course, and they're going to get you set to start your career off on the right foot. They're all about value at Relo, and that's why there's a whole bunch of extras included in every course they offer, including in-depth webinars, exam prep resources, weekly career tips, business ideas, even blogs and podcast episodes not available to the general public. You can learn more on their website. And if you're bundling the services to save dough, make sure you use that promo code Ryan100. The Alberta Commercial and the Alberta Residential Real Estate Bundles, Ryan100 knocks $100 off each of them when you get started today at relo.ca. Markham Hislop is the publisher and the man behind Energy Media. He's one of Canada's more recognized climate and energy journalists and has been a good friend of this show for quite some time. It's a pleasure to welcome, on the eve of the cabinet reveal, back to the show, Markham Hislop. It's nice to see your face, buddy.
Well, the same to you, man. As you and I were talking about over email, next month is the 10th anniversary of the first interview I did with you. It was just after, it was June 2015, and you had me on to talk about the Rachel Notley's NDP government's energy policies, climate policies, and so that is a long time.
Man, I'm just looking right now. So people can obviously check out your work at energy.media. That's energy with an I.media. You've been doing this now for more than 10 years, I guess it would have been, because you and I, when we first got to know each other around that time, you would have been one of the first, Markham, like in the independent media space. Wouldn't you have been at that time?
You know what, Ryan? We started in my wife Joanne is a partner in the business. She's a TV news video shooter and editor, and I was a print reporter.
Yeah.
And we started our first online news organization full time December of 2008 in Southeast Calgary. If
Wow.
we aren't the longest running independent news organization, online news organization in Canada, we're pretty close to it.
Well, congratulations on that. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since you and I started talking. I mean, as I was saying in my preamble, let's rewind the clock 10 years. It was a time of I think, political uncertainty in the sense that people weren't sure exactly what they were seeing. Justin Trudeau had just shot up the middle between Stephen Harper and Thomas Mulcair and formed a Liberal government that quite frankly, not a lot of people saw coming. Rachel Notley had just ended that 40-plus year progressive conservative dynasty in Alberta. In the 10 years that have followed, there have been major energy storylines, some of them encouraging, some of them discouraging, depending on what you do for work or what your perspective is. But has it been the most dynamic decade in Canada's energy history?
Well, from my point of view, it has because we started doing energy transition reporting in around 2011, 2012, and it just accelerated after that. And I would say about 2017 is when we really shifted to mostly energy transition, looking at what's going on at the global in the global energy system, and then reporting on what are the implications for Alberta. Because let's face it, I mean, this will come as no surprise to Albertans. Alberta is the epicenter of the Canadian oil and gas industry. And by the way, all this talk about Canada becoming an energy superpower, it is an energy superpower. Canada is the fourth largest oil producer in the world, the fifth largest gas producer in the world. It's already an energy superpower. And so, what happens in Alberta, this is why it's so important. It's one of the few sources of growth for oil supply, assuming that there is more demand for it going forward. And we can talk about that in a minute. Alberta is incredibly important. And, Ryan, I'm going to brag a little bit here. We shifted in January to 100% video journalism. And so we're now up to 3 million views a month and and we've got a big audience across Canada. And I'm getting a lot of feedback now from Eastern Canadians, and they're saying, why should we care about Alberta? Well, let me tell you about why you should care about Alberta. It may not be the economic engine of Canada, but it's one of the bigger economic engines of Canada. And it certainly is. Oil and gas exports are the biggest by far for the country. So I'm a big fan of Alberta, and what happens in Alberta matters. And the fact that Alberta is not having the right conversation about the energy future is deeply concerning.
Well, the right conversation about the energy future. Let's dig into it. This is you're used to being I don't want to describe you as an antagonist, because I think an antagonist, I mean, there's traditional literary structure, of course, of who the antagonist is, but I don't think you do what you do to piss people off. I think what you do is in good faith, and I think you're presenting facts based on interviews that you're doing and statistics you're sifting through and things that are obvious that you can note around you. But what's driving your journalism? Before we get into this, because you're going to upset some people with your inconvenient truths today.
I'm going to upset a lot of people, and I hope I upset a lot of people because, look, just before I came on, you ran a clip of Premier Danielle Smith talking about the energy future. She's delusional. I've been in press conferences with the premier. I've talked to the premier. I've been on a radio show, and she believes that what OPEC believes, which is that there's going to be a huge increase in oil demand between now and 2050. And she says, well, look, why can't Alberta get a bunch of that? Why can't we double oil production and produce the same as Russia and Saudi Arabia at 9 million barrels a day? Well, that's one view, and it's shared by the oil industry and the business community in Alberta. But there's a whole nother worldview out there of modelers and forecasters, the International Energy Agency, S&P Global, Bloomberg NEF, Rystad Energy, Canadian Energy Regulator, on, who also model the future, and they have a very, very different view of it. And so what we do here at Energy Media is not only do I interview global experts on energy, it's about half of what I do, I read modeling, I read the data, I read the evidence. And from my point of view, the premier is right out to lunch. This whole idea of, we'll just export to Asia. Okay, who in Asia? Who's going to buy it? China is busy electrifying its transportation sector. I just read a piece before I came on that sales are up 44% of electric vehicles in China. China's oil demand is going to peak next year. It may have already peaked already. So who else in Asia is going to buy ultra heavy sour crude that gets made out of the oil sands? Show me the math. Show me where these customers are that we want to build a pipeline to and then ship our oil to. Because I would argue that there's plenty of evidence that there isn't going to be a market, that we're going to hit peak oil demand in 2030, and then we're going to see a decline, which will have more supply than demand, and prices will tank, and Alberta is going to be in big, big trouble. So we can have an evidence-based, data-based discussion about the various, what might happen after 2030. But Alberta doesn't have that conversation. All it does is believe Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, CAP, press releases and listen to the premier blather on about something she knows nothing about.
Okay, so
Don't listen to Danielle Smith.
So we see the list of demands. It was a week ago today that the premier took to live television, streaming online, essentially putting Ottawa on notice that there's a list of things that Alberta's looking for, and if Alberta doesn't get them, well, then we'll see. The premier threatening a national unity crisis, and a big part of what Alberta is looking for, at least through the premier's office, is pipeline expansion. They want access to 3 different coasts by expanding pipelines. For the benefit of our podcast listeners, you burst out laughing as soon as I said that, but I know there's a lot of people that feel like that is a real untapped, no pun intended, untapped opportunity. Why is this so funny to you?
Because from my point of view, okay, there's 2 worldviews here. And I just alluded to the one, which is based on the OPEC modeling. You can see it in World Oil Outlook 2045 and 2050, which is on OPEC's website. You can go there and look at the data, look at their modeling, and that supports the premier's point of view. And then I listed a whole bunch of forecasters who model a very different energy future, where oil and gas demand peaks in 2030 and then declines thereafter. That's bad news. You don't want to be building pipelines when your customers don't want to buy your product anymore. And in that scenario, instead of fighting with Ottawa, I would argue that that Alberta's far and away its best strategy is to build a solid working relationship with Ottawa, so that if the IEA's vision of the energy future comes true, then Alberta has resources. It has access to federal capital. It has access to federal policy and regulatory issues. It has good relationships with its neighbors. Alberta risks, by fighting with everybody and souring relationships and not having a working relationship, if the worst case scenario comes true, as I think it will, it risks being isolated, and it risks not having the resources it needs to pivot to a different energy future, and then it gets left behind. Trust me, man. What does mom say? We just had Mother's Day yesterday. So what does mom say? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. No mother ever said to their child, plan for the best. Don't worry about the worst. We'll just ignore that.
By the way, a shout out to all the moms out there, and I hope that everybody had a very happy Mother's Day. Ryu Street Fighter is in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. Says the relationship between Ottawa and Alberta has always been confrontational, but it's been one way, and it's been abusive, with Ottawa causing the damage. Alberta tries to defend itself, and we're the bad guys. Ryu Street Fighter says, F off. How would you respond?
Well, F off the Riley Street Fighter, because Riley Street Fighter's an idiot. Right?
Oh, Markham, you don't know this person.
Hey, look. If Riley Street Fighter wants to come on and quote modeling and quote data and quote evidence, then fine, we can have that conversation. But no, all he's got is talking points that he picked up on social media or in the back booth of a Tim Hortons. You can't discuss the future of a province, especially one as important as Alberta, with idiots like that.
So, Markham, the theme, you've promised us that you can come on this show and that you can plot out a path to Alberta and Ottawa working closely together. We're presenting it as Ottawa and Alberta as BFFs. And I think to get to that stage, first things first, let's, at this point, we'll know a little bit more when we see what Mark Carney's cabinet looks like. We'll know a little bit more when we understand what the replacement to the consumer carbon tax will be, or what climate policy will look like moving forward, what investments in energy infrastructure could look like. But number one, based on what we know at this point, how is Prime Minister Carney, do you think, most different than Prime Minister Trudeau or Prime Ministers before him?
He's an economist. Now, look, he's given a couple of media conferences where he's talked about his economic plan. And he apologized. He said, look, I'm sorry for being really nerdy here, but I want to talk about backward linkages from the auto industry. Yeah. To somebody like me, who's an energy journalist, I go, oh my God, the guy is actually talking in full paragraphs, and he's talking about economic theory, economic development theory, that has direct relevance to Alberta. He will come in and he will have an economic plan. And so what Alberta could do is say, hey, you know what? You're an economist. You're going to do something that we haven't had a prime minister do in a long, long time. You're going to have a rational economic strategy. You want to build infrastructure. Let's cooperate with you. Let's bring Ottawa's resources to bear on what we want to do. If the worst case scenario develops and we have to pivot our oil industry, particularly the oil sands, from making feedstock for American refineries, and instead we build a advanced materials manufacturing industry in Alberta using bitumen as a feedstock, we need the federal government. We need their capital. We need their access to promote to build markets for this, for carbon fiber and asphalt binder and all the things that we could make out of it. Alberta is far, far better served to have a positive working relationship with the federal government as a backup plan in case things do go south, than it is to be out fighting and talking about separation, and then all of a sudden the worst case scenario happens, and then what? Then what happens? You go running cap in hand to Ottawa and ask for. That's not a very good strategy.
Super Chat Ken says it's interesting that President Trump has done nothing to push Keystone forward. Says you've got to ask yourself why no pipeline builders have come forward, knowing that they've got full support from the U.S. government. It's worrying. We're talking about pipeline or energy expansion. You got to talk about it in the context of private versus public or government investment, don't you? Like, isn't that like a pretty basic starting point for evaluating where the appetite is? If there's not real interest in private or corporate investment, if there's not investors outside of government, does that say something? What do you see?
Well, okay, first of all, the Danielle Smith would say that's all Ottawa's fault because they brought in changes to the Environmental Impact Assessment Act with Bill C-69, and then they banned tankers off the northwest coast of BC, which is Bill C-48, and then they'd list a whole bunch of other things, and they say it's all Ottawa's fault that no private company wants to build a pipeline. Nobody wants to build a pipeline in North America, period. The American oil demand peaked 20 years ago and is on the decline. Gasoline demand peaked in 2018. It's on the decline. That's our market. Those are our customers. Now, and then we could get into the modeling about what's happening in China and what's happening in Asia and what's happening in Europe and so on. But suffice it to say that this great explosion of oil demand that the Premier is counting on, the industry is counting on, it is not happening. In fact, what do we see in the last little while? OPEC flooding the market with cheap oil, driving the price down. And there's at least maybe a 50-50 chance that what OPEC is doing is saying, oh, you know what? We're in for structural market decline. We're going to take all our market share and we're going to ride the decline curve down into wherever that ends up in 2050. And we're Alberta. Well, they're going to have to put up with $40 oil and do the best they can. There is a scenario here, Ryan, where Alberta's in big, big trouble. Its oil and gas industry will not have the rosy future. And could we at least not talk about that future?
Well, yeah.
Could we at least not talk about an alternate strategy to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, and I think that we've had this conversation a million times, not
Yes,
just
we
you
have.
and I, but on the show, right? Like Jacqueline's in our live chat right now. What's up, Jacqueline? Presented by Park Power, says, I don't understand why we can't just diversify. Says whether you believe in climate change or not, or that oil will run out or not. She says, why not have more revenue streams and more jobs for Albertans? If you start talking about global oil demand peaking in 2030, you're talking about like in the next 5 to 6 years, right? You're talking about, I mean, this is where the trend sort of starts to go. You're not talking about turning off the taps and taking all the vehicles off the road. Everybody's got their home heating figured out and evolved in the next 5 years, but you're talking about a peak and then obviously the beginning of a decline. It would be of concern to anybody working in traditional oil and gas, but I guess facts are facts, much like gravity. Whether or not you believe something is happening does not, make it happen or not. I guess, what's the approach, like Jacqueline says, for the average Albertan, and where should the average person's head be at, do you think?
Well, look, here's the irony here. And I'll illustrate this point. I had a meeting a couple of years ago with the Pathways Alliance. I interviewed Kendall Dilling, their CEO. And beforehand, I went out to, for coffee with the press guy because he wanted to make sure I wasn't, going to eat, be mean to Kendall. And he said, you're perceived as
Kendall
hostile.
can handle himself.
Oh, yeah, and he did. It was a great interview.
Yeah,
by the way.
Kendall's
You can see
just
it on our
fine.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, here's the point. He said, Markham, you're perceived as hostile to the industry. And I said, you're nuts. I'm a critic of the industry because the industry does a lot of things wrong. It's got environmental liabilities and greenhouse gas emissions that are way too high, et cetera, et cetera. But the worst thing that it does is that it thinks that the energy future is going to be just like the energy past. Now, Alberta Innovates is about a year away from having a commercial process to make carbon fiber from bitumen, okay? So they did the economic modeling. If you get $50 for a barrel of bitumen, you will get $197 for that same barrel of bitumen if you turn it into carbon fiber. You'll get $120 if you turn it into activated carbon. You'll get $100 if you turn it into asphalt binder. Bitumen is a very, very unique hydrocarbon. The worst thing you could do is burn it. The best thing you can do is turn it into materials. It's ideally suited to be used as feedstock for materials manufacturing. So if Danielle Smith took my advice and using their own intellectual property, I might add, built an advanced materials manufacturing industry using Alberta oil, it would have a future out past the next century. So I actually am arguing for a long-term prosperous future for the Alberta industry rather than riding the decline curve down to the bottom and winding up like, Mississippi at some point in the future.
I just figured out that you said decline curve. I thought earlier you were calling it like decline curve, like the decline. I thought this was a shot at the former premier. I thought, gosh, the play on words from Markham, the decline curve. We're talking to Markham Hislop. He's the publisher of Energy Media. We're going to take a quick break, pay a couple of bills, Markham. When we come back, I want to get into specifics. Who kicks it off? A lot of times when there's reconciliation to happen in a relationship that's been bruised or broken, somebody's got to take the first step. Who takes it? What does it look like? Can Canadians, and I don't even want to put it that way. I threw on the brakes mid-sentence. I was about to say, can Canadians and Albertans be satisfied? But Albertans are Canadians. Can everybody be happy with the plan that Markham Hislop will soon propose? That's coming up in just a second. If you're watching us right now and you're anywhere near YouTube, whether that's on your phone, your tablet, your computer, I want you to make sure and go ahead and subscribe to Energy Media. That's Markham Hislop's channel. Of course, you can find him online at energy.media as well. This conversation is happening with the support of partners like the Leduc, Nisku, and Wetaskiwin Region Chamber. Coming up this week on the 14th of May, the 15th as well, they present a 2-day extravaganza, the first ever, the inaugural Nisku Energy Show. I'm super excited to be hosting it. On the 14th of May, we'll be kicking it all off with a breakfast at the beautiful Silent Ice Sports and Entertainment Center. Premier's going to be speaking there, and we'll go on from there. These are the titans of industry. These are the innovators, the collaborators. This show is designed to highlight the expertise and advancements that are shaping Alberta's future. And it's being held in the heart of Alberta, right around the Edmonton International Airport in Nisku, Alberta. You can get your tickets today. You've still got time. There's a job fair. There's amazing networking opportunities. You'll find it all at yourchamber.ca. California Closets, without a doubt, the best in the business in custom closets and storage solutions for your entire home. And you know what? They're Canadian owned and operated. Every single installation that they're completing in the province of Alberta is manufactured in Alberta, and it all starts with a free design consultation. Whether it's an entertainment center, maybe it's that beautiful sort of a wet bar you've always dreamed of having just off your kitchen. Maybe it's a garage storage system, a Murphy bed so your home office can double as a guest room. Maybe you've always wanted those beautiful bookshelf installs, your own personal library, or a mudroom, an entryway, a boot room that'll be the envy of all the neighbors. California Closets can design a space to fit your reality, and that includes your budget. You can learn more about the different ways they can work with you and guarantee their product for life by checking out californiaclosets.ca. Also wanted to shine a light on North Road Investment Council. This team does an unbelievable job helping folks with questions that are keeping them up at night. Do I actually have enough to retire, or am I fooling myself? Should I pull out my CPP early, or should I wait? How do I protect my savings from taxes or inflation or a market crash? If these questions are keeping you up at night, or maybe you don't even know which questions to ask, it's time to talk to the team at North Road Investment Council. They've got a team of certified financial planners and chartered financial analysts that can answer your biggest retirement and financial planning questions. And you'll pay a per-hour fee, not commissions paid by selling you investment products. It's independent advice, and it works. You can connect with them today at northroadic.com. PNC Bio checking out the show, watching us live on YouTube this morning in our live chat powered by Park Power, says, you know how Alberta feels about Quebec? Well, the rest of Canada feels similarly about all this separation nonsense. Says the rest of Canada right now is viewing Alberta in that exact same light, minus the culture. A shot at the interview, the conversation we had with Premier just a few episodes ago. She laid out her plan. We asked her to respond to the Bloc Québécois leaders, the comments about Alberta lacking culture, how oil and gas is not a culture. All of this in the talk of separation. I'm going to talk to you about Alberta sovereignty, Markham, in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about what can happen, what should happen before we get to that type of scenario. Alberta and Ottawa playing nice. Alberta and Ottawa, priorities benefiting one another. How does that start in meaningful fashion?
Well, first of all, Ottawa doesn't understand Alberta. I'll grant you that. I mean, one of the advantages of being a journalist is you get a lot of off-the-record conversations, or conversations on background where you can't attribute it. But nevertheless, I talked to people in Ottawa in the Trudeau government who were just frustrated. They keep, they build Trans Mountain expansion, or they approve projects or whatever, and nothing seems to make Alberta happy. And the message that I give them always is, you have to understand the frustration inside Alberta. Because Albertans look at, now, not the average Albertan, but I know the leaders, and the CEOs do this, people inside the business community do this. They look at the oil production. U.S., 13.2 million barrels a day. Biggest oil exporter by a mile. Russia and Saudi Arabia, 9.1, 9.2, 2 and 3. Canada, number 4. And Canada is just Alberta. I mean, any oil that's produced outside of Alberta is produced by Alberta-based companies for the most part. So Alberta is Canada when it comes to oil. So we're number 4, but Albertans like Danielle Smith and the CEOs, they look at those numbers and say, we have 170 billion barrels of bitumen in our reserves. We have 130 trillion cubic feet of gas in our gas reserves. We can be competitive on price. The only thing we don't have is access to tidewater. We are frustrated because the other 3 countries have access to tidewater. They don't have any problem with putting out you want a pipeline in Texas to the coast, you got a pipeline. It's the same in Russia and Saudi Arabia. not in Alberta. Alberta's ambitions to be Saudi Arabia, to be Russia, to play with the big boys is being frustrated over and over and over again by Ottawa. That is the basis for a lot of the, what you hear from Premier Smith and from the industry and so on. So I would argue that the middle ground here is for Carney and Smith to sit down and say, okay, that's one energy future. Let's talk about that, because if that's the energy future that if we're going to have expanding oil demand instead of contracting oil demand, then maybe we should talk about a pipeline or two. Maybe that needs to happen. And at the same time, there's no reason why we couldn't build advanced materials manufacturing, Ms. Smith or Premier Smith, given the fact that you own the intellectual property for it. You have the power to do that if you want to do it. Come together and say, could be this way, could be that way. We got things that we agree on. Let's build on those. And if it turns out to be the worst case scenario, which we worry about, then we have a working partnership where Ottawa can come to Alberta and say, look, we'll help you make the pivot. We'll help you build these other industries. We'll help you find out, build domestic markets for your bitumen, domestic markets for your gas and your ethane and what have you in your petrochemical industry. There is the potential here, but but particularly Smith and Alberta has to bring the heat down on the conversation. What was the name of that guy that was ranting, the first one that you mentioned that I called an idiot?
Yeah, that was Ryu Street Fighter.
Yeah, Ryu Street Fighter. That guy is a symbol. He's a symbol of the way that many Albertans approach this issue. Instead of looking at the evidence and looking at the data and trying to understand it, they just simply regurgitate whatever they're told, and then they get really aggressive and about it. And stop. Just stop. Have a reasonable conversation with people you don't agree about.
Well, and
you may find that those people have some actual, good points to make.
Well, this is like why we do shows like this, right? Because we give everybody, Markham, we have the flamethrower on Fridays presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton to Sherwood Park. Everybody's best 5 minutes of the week, or most cathartic 5 minutes of the week anyway. But folks sound off and they have their say, and you get pissed off. And listen, I understand. Like if someone has been led to believe, or someone's personal experience is that, they live in a region of Canada or even a region of the province that has, a storied and prosperous history related to oil and gas, and they believe a bright future related to oil and gas. People have been able to find six-figure employment out of high school. It's helped build community centers and hospitals and yada, yada, yada. I get all that, right? And then they look around them and they see global demand remain, and then they see a federal government that, in their estimation, and of course, we've gotten to the weeds with you and Max Fawcett and others talking about, what actually killed Northern Gateway or why Energy East actually died, or why Keystone XL maybe isn't getting built right now, like Super Chat Ken just referenced. And these folks believe that right, and because they've been told this, and because they've seen some evidence, like you can pick and choose kind of your anecdotes, but they've seen prime ministers, or they've seen international bodies, they've seen these international accords that have talked about. They've heard voices saying, leave it in the ground. They've heard, it's the global energy transition. It's all of these types of things. And they believe that everybody is piling on not just Alberta, but on their energy industry in particular. And so they get prickly because it's their livelihood and it's their jobs and it's their careers and it's all these types of things. I understand why people get all worked up. But I want to have meaningful conversations where we look at what's actually happening, what's really happening. Ideally, where there's respect for different positions, where people try to meet folks where they're at and actually sort through the reality right now, where things are going, trying to map out the trends and how to best position ourselves, including these audience members, for what the careers of the future look like, for what the economy of the future looks like. Aaron, or I think it was in our chat, no, it was Erica in our chat that said, Jespo, there's a lot of things that work that way. Whether or not you acknowledge the reality of something doesn't change the reality.
Do you remember in 2018 when you moderated a debate between Zipporah Berman and I on your radio show?
I do.
And Zipporah came in and said, no, you must shut down the oil sands because greenhouse gas emissions, climate change, and all of that. And I argued against that. And I said at the very beginning, I stipulate to the concerns, to the climate science and the concerns about greenhouse gas emissions. I admit all of that. Even still, there is a future for Alberta oil and gas, a very prosperous one, if if we're creative about it, if we accept where the global energy transition is going. And by the way, when you and I were having those kind of conversations, the experts that I was interviewing at the time were telling me, oh yeah, we're going to have electric vehicles, their inflection point will be like 2032, 2035. It was 2020. Things are speeding up so quickly, driven by China and the manufacturing capacity that it has and the innovation that it's showing and the exports into global south, all of that kind of stuff. The future is arriving so much quicker than we understand. I've got a quote from an International Energy Agency analyst who said, what used to be our midterm, our medium term forecasts are now becoming our short term forecasts. Things are accelerating so quickly at the global level, we can't keep up. The data changes, it's just insane how fast things are changing. Inside Alberta, it's like a bubble. Nobody ever talks about what, Chinese EV companies exporting to the global south and electrifying transportation, which is what OPEC thinks, where OPEC thinks all the oil demand is going to come from after 2030. On and on and on. There is a dynamic, rapidly changing global energy system out there, a rapidly changing global economy. And in Alberta, it's the energy future is going to be like the energy past. We're like 20 years out of the conversation. That's a big problem.
I want to recognize here. People can check out energy.media. It's not your piece. It's Ian Urquhart's piece, but I want to get you to comment on it. It's the headline, Alberta, this published on the 8th of May. Alberta has long accused Ottawa of trying to destroy its oil industry. Writes Ian, that's a dangerous myth. I guess in all of this, you have to also ask the question, are these comments or is this positioning being rolled out in good faith? A lot of people are saying that the two most difficult things, or the scenarios that could pose the biggest challenges for an Alberta premier, regardless of who it is, but let's say for Danielle Smith right now, would be number one, the Conservatives forming federal government, and number two, Mark Carney actually succeeding. Both would make it very difficult for Alberta premiers who have had for quite some time success in rattling that saber, in fighting Ottawa, in standing defiantly in favor of or in support of Alberta's energy industry. What's the reality here?
Well, take a look at pipelines. The problem, Premier Smith and others are always complaining about the federal government wanting to kill the oil and gas industry. Well, under the Trudeau Liberals, they got two big pipelines. They got Trans Mountain expansion, and they got Line 3 expansion, which is about, I'm guessing, around over 900,000 barrels of shipping capacity added. It's not that the federal government is trying to kill the oil and gas industry. What's happening here is the federal government is not giving the oil and gas industry and Alberta everything it asked for. Because Alberta wanted 5 pipelines. We only got 2. Well, now we're frustrated and angry. We expanded production of the oil sands by 1.2 million barrels a day over the last decade. Why couldn't we expand it by 2 million barrels a day or 3 million barrels a day? Why aren't we exporting to Asia? Why are we having to continue to send it down to the United States and get a lower price for it? It's not that they're not getting some support from Ottawa. They're not getting what they want. You can't understand the debate around this issue unless you understand the ambition of people in the oil and gas industry. The leaders of Alberta want to be masters of the universe, not little masters of the universe. And they see Ottawa as getting in the way of that. And they want Ottawa out of the way. To look at the March 19th letter that 14 oil and gas CEOs sent to the leaders of the political parties. What did it say? We want you to do all of these things that we're asking for, and Smith has asked for, to realize the full potential of our industry. This isn't about did they get something or didn't they get something. It's they didn't get everything they want. And they're frustrated and they're angry about it. And that stokes a lot of the anger in Alberta.
Redneck Philosopher in our live chat says, Alberta does have a culture. It's our hard work. It's personal responsibility, Western culture. We don't need government in our lives. But you media hacks want us to be none of those. You want us just to bend over and take it. You can check out our shorts, by the way, on our YouTube channel, on our TikTok and Instagram as well. Johnny put together kind of a 60-second summary of Danielle Smith, like I said, clapping back at Mr. Blanchette, the Bloc Québécois leader, talking about Alberta's culture. I will note the most recurring, and listen, I'm a proud Albertan. Like, I love living here. I'm raising a family here, born and raised Alberta boy. But a lot of people are leaving comments. They're going, a lot of what the Premier's describing is describing Canada, not necessarily Alberta. Listen, I think Alberta can come up with its own arguments if it wants to argue for some sort of whatever word you want to use, autonomy, sovereignty. These are all big words that have huge implications. But I think trying to stack yourselves up, and I'm saying this as a proud Albertan, try to pretend like you have the same argument, the same history, the same reality as they do in Quebec on a cultural standpoint is quite frankly foolish. I don't think that that's the way to go. I think that sort of argument would be laughed out of any other debate forum or laughed out of any other conversation across the country right now. But there is a vibe in Alberta. Everybody says, you talking about vibes? I'm talking about vibe. There is a vibe. There is that kind of Western spirit. Entrepreneurs have thrived here. Innovation is evident everywhere you look here. There is an energy in Alberta that's something to be very, very proud of. The question is whether or not that qualifies as a culture in the context of sovereignty, and that's where I think it jumps the shark.
I just have no use for that debate at all. Is Alberta unique? Of course, Alberta's unique.
Every province is unique.
Well, look, I've lived in every.
Well,
province
maybe not Manitoba.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Hey, I grew up in Manitoba.
I married a Manitoban.
But look, we're coming up to the 10th anniversary of the first time that you and I talked about this kind of stuff.
How do you think people will be celebrating that, Markham? How do you think the average person will be celebrating the 10th anniversary of the first time you and I did an interview?
I'd be surprised if they remembered 5 minutes after your show ended.
Yeah, that's right.
But you are coming on my show tomorrow.
I can't wait.
Hey, we're looking forward to it, and you'll be able to find it on Energy Media's YouTube channel.
That's right.
But here's the point. You've been talking to me long enough now, and have I been blowing smoke? Have I been wrong have I been egregiously wrong for all those 10 years that you can point to that and go, this guy just doesn't know what he's talking about?
You know what? I mean, to be fair, I'm not yet able to offer an informed answer to that question because you have been talking about 2030 for quite some time and we're not there yet. So we'll see.
Sure, fair enough. But we're a lot closer. The stuff that I've been talking about that is going to happen by 2030 we're well on our way to that. Right? Okay. That grist for another conversation when we can pull out the data and the evidence and have a look at it, which is not today.
I hope. Listen, it's like an interesting position to be in right here because this is not something like when someone says like a doomsday forecaster. When somebody says, "Hey, listen, I think that this industry or this population or this nation or whatever it is could be due for some real economic hardship and economic pain." You don't want to be right. Right? You don't want to be cheering against Alberta. You don't want to be cheering against Canada. I know that environmentalists will look at, the oil and gas industry and they'll look at more sustainable or renewable forms of energy and they hope that transition's happening as quickly as possible. The obvious comment in all of this, and Jacqueline made the comment earlier in the show, is that Alberta can remain you use the word energy superpower. Some people kind of roll their eyes a little bit at that. But listen, I love the ambition. And if it is the reality, great. You can remain an energy superpower by evolving your industry, by growing your industry. It seems so obvious, but maybe we just need to keep saying it.
Look, one of the things, I worked in the oil and gas industry for 5 years. In fact, the 5 years prior to starting up our online news organization. And I interviewed I interacted with oil and gas engineers all over North America. Landmans is set in Midland, Texas. I worked out of Midland for 2 years. Bakersfield, California, all over the place, including in Alberta. And one of the things I learned is that the oil and gas industry is very innovative. But when it figures out something that works, it sticks with what works. It doesn't. This is not an industry. It's let me put it this way. It's an industry that inside the box is as innovative as any other industry on the planet. And Alberta has the best oil and gas engineers of anywhere. It can hold its own against Houston or any other place. Saudi Aramco, doesn't matter. That's inside the box. get outside the box, and it doesn't innovate. It just wants to keep on doing. It's got blinkers on. Just let me put some dill bit in a pipeline, send it down to the Midwest, send it down to Houston. That's what's done. I've made profit with that. I can sell that to my investors. Don't get me to do anything else. And so it doesn't handle disruptive innovations. It doesn't handle disruptive change very well. That's the problem. We're coming up to a period where the oil industry is going to be disrupted in a big way. And that is a matter not of policy, not of wishful thinking. It's technology change, consumer change, market change, and to some extent policy change. So you can see it coming. It's a freight train. You can see the light coming off, down at the other end of the tunnel. It's coming this way. So are you going to adapt? Are you going to hop off the track and do something else, or are you going to get run over by the train? That's, from my point of view, that's the options that Alberta has.
Jeff is watching us from the historic community of Whiskey Gap, and want to give a shout out to them this morning. I know Jeff involved, I believe, as president in his local Chamber of Commerce, says the trick is understanding the future and making it work for the people of Alberta. The federal government is not Burger King, and Danielle Smith can't have it her way in perpetuity. That from Jeff from Whiskey Gap. That's a nice reference there.
Well, is that not the truth? I mean, look, for all of the modeling that I could bring to the table, including OPEC and ExxonMobil and, sort of on Danielle Smith's side, I read all of it because you can't understand where the future might go unless you understand all of the different versions of what that future might be. And there's lots of big error bars on all of this kind of stuff. So you can't say with any certainty what's going to happen in 2030, what's going to happen in 2040, what's going to happen in 2050. What you can say is, here are the trends in technology and policy and changes in market. Where are we likely to be given these particular circumstances? How might that affect Alberta? We can have a conversation about that, a very rational one, a very calm one, where I don't get upset and call somebody an idiot. That's my preferred way of doing things. But that's not the conversation that Alberta has. Alberta gets all upset, and some guy comes on and says, the redneck says awful things, and the other dude says awful things. How can you have a rational conversation? How can you chart the course of Alberta in a rapidly changing world when all people do is sling ad hominem and refuse to listen to the other guy? That's stupid.
Yeah, you got to stop calling people idiots, though, if you want people to stop flinging mud too, Markham. That's a
yeah. Well, I get a little upset about this. I've been in this game a long time, man. And what I bring to the table, I do my work. I do my math. Any question that you ask me, I can give you an answer and show my math. And I'm getting really, really tired of people teeing off on me. So anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah, if anybody's on Facebook, they can follow you to see you and Brett Wilson have kind of weekly dust-ups in the comment sections. I think deep down inside, you guys kind of sort of like each other a little bit. There seems to be, although you're hucking mud at each other every few days, there seems to be, you keep coming back for more. Both of you do. What's up with the dynamic there, you and that dragon?
We have a DM relationship that I don't want to talk about.
Okay, fair enough. Aurora Astra says we need to have smarter conversations about these big topics, and we need to consider different points, and that's why I love this show. That from Aurora Astra. We sure appreciate that. We've also got others, and we've got Roger in here who basically says, all I want is just to find a federal government that's not hostile to Alberta. Says, I'm just sick of paying for basically every single provincial government across the country, save Newfoundland. That from Roger. I mean, obviously a comment on equalization. These arguments about Alberta's energy future and the potential here that's not being reached and the adversarial relationship with Ottawa, et cetera, are a lot of the arguments that are being used to fuel some of the separation talk. And everybody's expecting to see some sort of an attempt at a referendum happen, and who knows, the Premier says that she'll promise it in 2026. And it's been kind of this recurring theme ever since the Liberals won the federal election, if not obviously before then. You've talked about it on your YouTube channel. You've been doing interviews on it. You described the separation play as a total fiasco. You joke about the Alberta Republican Party. Take us into where your head's at right now on this file.
Well, from within my context, within my analytical framework, the Republican Party of Alberta is sort of the leading edge of the energy future is going to be just like the energy past. It's like driving with your rear view mirror. And why do they want to separate? So that they can get pipelines out to the coast, presumably down through the states, and they can get away from all of this onerous federal legislation like the oil and gas emissions cap and so on. And they think if they think that the energy future is going to be like the energy past, they want to protect the energy past. And I think that that kind of an approach to the future is absolutely wrong. I mean, this isn't about politics and whether Alberta can exist as a 51st state or as an independent country or any of that kind of stuff. It's people who preserve Alberta in amber, freeze it and never see any kind of change in the midst of fundamental change. Like it's literally a technology revolution at the global level. And these folks just pretend that none of that is happening. And we don't talk about it enough. So from my point of view, these are people who are stuck in the past and are determined to keep Alberta in the past.
What are you going to put me on the spot with tomorrow? What are we going to be talking about when I join you on your show tomorrow?
You know what?
You haven't told me yet.
I was kind of waiting to see what came out of this interview. So when I do my interview prep, I'll have a list of questions for you. But I don't think we want to relitigate this conversation. I mean, I've had this enough, and you've had me on here enough over the years to talk about it. I'm kind of curious about Ryan Jesperson about why you do what you want to do. I want to get into Ryan Jesperson, the interviewer, the host, the journalist,
Okay. All right.
How does that sound?
That sounds great. And where can people check that out?
It'll be on our Energy Media YouTube channel, and we'll put it up on all of our social media platforms like X and Facebook and Blue Sky and so on.
Awesome, pal. Well, you've been killing it on YouTube. Don't think we haven't been noticing. Closing in on 20,000 subscribers, and a lot of people are really appreciating the work you're doing. We're seeing a lot of love for you in the chat. Not everybody loves you, Markham. Not everybody in the chat loves you. But we're seeing.
Look, if everybody loved me, man, I wouldn't be doing my job.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for doing this, and I guess we'll talk to you in about 25 hours.
We'll look forward to it.
All right, buddy. Yeah, you got it. That's Markham Hislop. He's the founder and publisher of Energy Media. That's ENERGI. You can find him on YouTube. Go ahead and give him a subscribe there. And, of course, you can find him at energy.media. Let us know what you think. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. I see like a ton of comments here in the chat, and it fills my heart. I know that some of you can't stand this, that there's like very different perspectives that are being presented in the chat today, but I think that's the sign of a healthy show. I think that's the sign of a robust, diverse, and critically thinking audience, and I sure appreciate that. And John Hicks on this Monday morning, the first episode of the week on the heels of a very busy weekend. It appears to me as though you have also had your work as chat moderator cut out for you this morning. Folks are folks are a little ornery out of the gates today.
No, it's kind of chill. It's Monday morning vibes. I like
Monday morning.
People in there being people like to yell on Mondays.
Yeah,
they like to yell a lot. Maybe it's because they've got energy that needs to be expelled from the weekend.
Everyone's been away from each other for a couple of days.
Yeah. I'm here,
and I will be heard.
Notice me.
Alberta Girl says landlocked Alberta will not get more pipelines built as an independent country or the 51st state. Keystone was shut down on the American side, and BC will definitely not let another pipeline go to the coast. And the East, Alberta Girl says she is laughing her ass off. There you go.
Well, that's not nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think, though, I mean, like, we're talking about all these pipelines, getting all these pipelines built.
How many?
Well, and an important.
How many do we need?
Well, I think Premier wants 3. I think they want to. There's talk of. I'm not speaking for her for sure, but I know that there's a lot of people saying that when we expanded TMX, we didn't expand it enough.
Okay.
So there's an opportunity to expand that pipeline again, and then they want one going north, or maybe into Churchill, and then they want one going east. But the question is, like, where's the investment appetite for that? Because I don't think that the average taxpayer And for that matter, I don't think that people that are working in oil and gas want to see the government on the hook to pay for all these pipeline projects. That's not the way it's supposed to go. You can have government dollars used as, you can have some form of loan guarantee, or you can have some sort of a shared risk type scenario. I know that there's a lot of talk about First Nations investment opportunities and involvement in that on an ownership side, but I don't know that the average Canadian is super duper keen on spending. You look at like the cost overruns even with TMX.
Yeah.
And like that pipeline ended up costing like double what it was supposed to cost, right? You're looking now at whatever the estimate is. We asked the Prime Minister about it, Trudeau, that is, when he was here back in February. That pipeline ended up being, I think off the top of my head, too bad we don't still have Markham here to fact check us, but it was like 30 to 35 billion. Now looking to divest itself of that asset, looking to sell that asset, probably not going to get 35 billion for it. But like, does the average Canadian want the federal government to step up and build another pipeline? I don't think so.
I don't think, also timeline here. Nobody's talking about timeline. Like, the fastest you can build a pipeline is like 5 years east to west. That's going to be what? 10, 12, maybe 15 years at the most, 3 pipelines. Like, when do we see return on investment and get all this money and become successful in Alberta? I think it's ridiculous that, you've got a country like China with a ridiculous population, and all they're doing is reducing their coal, reducing their oil, reducing their natural gas, building solar, building wind. And I'm not saying we need to stop oil and gas in Alberta, but why are we not filling the gaps? I mean, the brownouts in the summer when it's too hot, that's perfect time to turn on the solar. When it's freezing cold in the winter and everyone's got their heat cranked and the grid's failing, then the wind's blowing like crazy, there you go, turn on the turbines. I mean, all these people who are just vehemently against the other forms, what are you talking about? Let's fill in the gaps. And me, I see everybody saying, let's build a pipeline. Sure. Like, how long does it take to approve and blah, blah, blah. Sure. And then when do you see that come to fruition? Like, when do you actually see it? And then when do you actually see money from it? Sure, the people working on it, they get some money for the jobs. But then after that, and we're also, I just want to mention, people talking about, oil's peaking and stuff like that. But the jobs are not, Ryan. They're going away. Everything's turning to automation.
A lot of comments about automation.
All the things that make oil work, all the things that turn things on and off and say things, regulate temperatures and whatever, it's all going to AI and people who regulate AI, and then fewer jobs because you need less people. You need more management of fewer people. So I don't see the big payoff for all this, even if we get 3 pipelines approved next month.
It's not happening.
No.
Crazy Fast Eddie says Alberta wants Pierre Elliott Trudeau's National Energy Program, the NEP. Do they realize that they also want private companies to nationalize oil and gas? Lorraine says the same people that want to separate want the federal government to pay for everything. Tony wonders if Brookfield is going to be the new WEF, the new World Economic Forum for some of the right wingers. Keep them coming. You can leave a comment on the YouTube episode if you're watching this later. You can always send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Don't show it yet, but we have results of our unofficial, unscientific Twitter referendum, which we held a short time ago. We saved the Alberta government tens of millions of dollars by conducting our own unofficial referendum on social media on Alberta separation. And we'll get to that in just a bit. Plus, we have a response from industry, from the insurance industry, to a conversation we had in particular with Nick Nanos, the pollster, on how Albertans are feeling about changes to the auto insurance system, moving to a no-fault insurance system. I want to get to that before we wrap this episode. First, if you didn't see it, just a few days ago on the 8th of May, it was the same day that we sat down with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. We had a chance to talk to 3 filmmakers that were nominated for, and there's Todd Crawshaw. You can see Darren Hagen, rather. Darren Hagen is the director of a brand new film. This is one called Pride versus Prejudice. That's the Delwyn Vriend story. And Darren joining 2 fellow filmmakers, all finalists for the Edmonton Film Prize. The other 2 films, Emergence and Dark Match. And all 3 of those are going to be screening the day that we're talking to you. It's the 12th of May right now. Back to back Jacks. Darren, of course, has the hardware. He won the Edmonton Film Prize. But all 3 of these will be screened tonight, the 12th of May, at Northwest Fest. It's going to be an event you will not want to miss. Northwest Fest running all the way through to the 15th of May. You can check out the details at northwestfest.ca, including the full lineup. An incredible opportunity to visit, number one, the theater. Hey, the smell of the hot popcorn. They serve cold beers, by the way, in the Metro Cinema, John, so you can grab a cold beer as well. Northwest Film Fest is Canada's longest-running nonfiction film festival, an amazing opportunity to check out some of the absolute best, including those that have highlighted other festivals. South by Southwest, Sundance, they're bringing them all to Alberta's capital city, including the enduring genius of Andy Kaufman, as told by filmmaker Alex Braverman in Thank You Very Much. I can't do a very good Kaufman. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's coming up on the 14th of May. Chain Reactions on the 15th. That's a headliner exploring the cultural impact of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. How cool is that? Patton Oswalt, one of the headliners in that one. Stephen King participating as well. It's Northwest Film Fest. You can get your tickets today at northwestfest.ca. If you're a Real Talk Patreon supporter, check your inbox for an exclusive opportunity to attend Northwest Fest for free. And if you're a YouTube channel member, a Real Deal or a Real VIP member, make sure you check out the Real Talk community chat on Discord for instructions on how to claim your tickets as well. Our friends at Friesen Brothers, I hope that those of you that attended their Mother's Day brunch had a wonderful time with your family at their fresh market stores. A reminder that Friesen Brothers garden centers are now open. You can check them out online at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. One of the beautiful things about the Friesen Brothers garden centers is that they're sourcing all of the plants from local greenhouses. They're focusing on the types of plants, annuals, perennials, what have you, including the soil as well, that's going to be adjusted, that's perfectly suited for this climate. That's the whole point. You can check out a tour of their Meadowlark greenhouse by visiting their website, friesen.com/garden center. Athabasca University is all about opportunity as Canada's open university with world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. That's why more than 94% of alumni report satisfaction with the quality of their Athabasca University education. They meet you where you're at. You pace out your own studies. You need to take longer? No problem. You want to rip through it? No problem. They've got all sorts of incentives. That is the AU advantage, and you can learn more about how it all works by checking out their website, athabascau.ca. And a shout out to the golfers in the crowd. You know, the ranch is wide open right now. Fantastic weekend for golf. And of course, the forecast this week coming up looking fantastic at the best value public golf course in Edmonton. You can check out their rates online at theranchgolf.com. That's also where you can learn more about their special events, business meetings, weddings, celebrations, and of course, golf tournaments. Nobody does more golf tournaments in Alberta than the team at the ranch. Their team experts in helping you get the biggest bang for your buck. Plus, it's a blast out there. We're going to be out there the 19th of June. That's a Thursday for the 4th annual Real Talk Golf Classic. You can learn more about that on our website, ryanjesperson.com, and you can book a tee time on their website. Again, that's theranchgolf.com.
Don says, do you want AI to take over your job and passion as well? AI will likely bring dystopia. I agree with you 100%, Don. We're fucking screwed. But here's the thing, Ryan. It's the genie's out of the bottle. So I don't think Ryan's job will be taken away in terms of humans having personalities and giving opinions. My job might be taken away, but maybe it'll probably just transition. And I would love to make the same amount of money and be at home and just moderate the AI, right?
If anything,
AI can probably do a better audio mix than I can.
I don't think that we're screwed. Number one, I don't think that we're screwed. But I do think that the number one way to guaranteed screw yourself is to fail to anticipate and respect the role that AI will play and is playing, right? So in other words, AI may not take your job, but somebody who understands how to utilize AI could take your job, right? So I think, like, for example, you say AI, you use chat moderating as an example. AI could moderate the chat, but you know what it would look like? It would pick up on it would pick up on like tensions, or it would pick up on trends, it would pick up on keywords. Like right now, our chat asks us we have to moderate things for review. So some of you that are dropping F-bombs as an example in the chat or hurling insults at one another, you'll find that maybe your chat won't show up, your comment won't show up for a bit. It's not necessarily that it's being censored. It's that the app or the algorithm is holding it for us to approve the comment. Now then that comes to a human gut instinct. We look at that and we say, what's the spirit of a comment? Like somebody may comment, fucking A. Like that's a positive comment, right? That's very different, where AI may not be able to pick up on that. But I do think AI is inserting itself into almost every single industry.
Sure.
There can be very good things that come of that, but also, of course, there will be employment implications. And it's not just AI. Automation we're talking like since the Industrial Revolution, automation has been a reality that people have had to adjust. And I'm not saying that you lack sympathy for somebody that sees their job being phased out. John and I, working in traditional media for the last 20 years, have seen many, many jobs phased out, most jobs phased out. And that happens in other industries as well. You feel, you sort of like, you feel for people that are affected by that. But at the same time, what are these people doing to posture and position and prepare themselves for where their industries are going? There's, for all this stuff that's happening in Alberta, and for the way that Albertans are supposedly wired, we talk a lot about personal responsibility. Albertans are big on that. That came up in our car insurance talk, which we're about to get into here. Personal responsibility. Albertans want to see it from people. And taking personal responsibility means understanding where industries are going, especially when it's your industry, and preparing yourself for the future.
Yeah, the AI, that is a form of AI, that chat thing you're talking about right now. And I don't moderate swear words or racism or homophobia. That already gets taken out, and that's just YouTube's algorithm doing it for me.
Yeah.
Trium in here says they think talk show hosts are easily some of the first jobs that can be lost to AI. I totally disagree. Yeah. There are AI podcasts, Trium, and I listen to them because I want to know how they're doing, and they are fucking horrible. And the second thing is, how do you take, a story from an AI perspective? Like the personal perspective and stories and opinions, I think will always be there with hosts on podcasts and radio and TV and whatever all those mediums turn into. But AI is, Ryan, you're right. Like you gotta learn it, or you're going to be in the dust, right? Yeah. Like it's a powerful tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess there could, you joke a lot about how you think that DJs, the DJ industry will be impacted by AI. And obviously, I don't
admitted that.
People throw a party and just throw it on Spotify. Yeah. But you're also, there are things that set apart the great DJs, right? Like you look at like the great, and I consider you to be one of them, John. But like you bring a lot to something. There's a personality to it. Sure. Same as talk shows. Like if we start bleeding audience to an AI talk host, then that's on us, because we've not found a way as actual humans to connect in meaningful fashion with our actual human audience. And so that'll be on us. Yeah, if we start losing our entire audience to an AI host, then it's time to go anyway. It's time to go anyway.
The AI podcasts are so funny. SNL did a skit on it where they're like, hey bro, how's it? Like they're just, they're trying to be humanoid, but it just doesn't work yet. But who knows? I don't know.
I will let everybody know,
maybe in a few years.
We have been saving up for a hologram co-host.
Yeah.
And
someone
we're just
who can
waiting.
Take a sick day for you.
She's going to be incredible when she fills in. We're looking forward to that. Why don't we put up our unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll? We did hold an unofficial, unscientific Twitter referendum just over the weekend, heading into the weekend, that is, and 3,000 of you voted. 3,011 of you. I appreciate that. We asked for Albertans and Albertans only to respond to the poll, and we're grateful that everybody respected that. Not a single bot, not a single bad actor, not a single person outside of Alberta voted in this poll for sure. Right, everybody? Right? We asked, what's your vote? Is it to stay in Canada? Is it to go it alone? Or is it to join the USA? And of 3,011 votes, John, 10%, or about 300, have voted to join the United States. About 17% have voted for Alberta to go it alone as a sovereign nation, for a grand total of 27% who want to leave. And the resounding majority here of the 3,011 votes, 73% voting to stay in Canada. We have saved Alberta's place in Canada with our unofficial unscientific Twitter poll. You're welcome, Alberta. You're welcome.
I mean, maybe in the future there's room, like in the distant future, there's room for like Canada and the States to merge. I just don't think the United States should take over Canada. Maybe one day we become like the country of North America or whatever. But this whole, it's not going to be
That's
ushered
never
in.
gonna happen.
It's not going to be ushered in by Trump. No, I'm just saying maybe we merge more with everything. Maybe we just become
I just don't
closer
you know why I don't
knit.
think?
But like
we're wired. So we love our American neighbors. And I know that a lot of us love going to the United States. I have family in the United States, love the United States. But we're very, 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 very different than Americans. We are, dude, 100%.
Compared to other countries, though, we're not. We're very similar.
Well, we're more similar to Britain than we are to the United States.
Oh, come on.
We're more similar to Sweden. We're more similar to Finland. We're more similar to Norway. We're 100%. We're more similar to many European nations than we are to the United States.
I don't know.
I feel like I do know. I feel like you could make the argument and even just look at, like, pick a file and see where you land on it. Like, look at Americans' approach to, like, military and global, like how Americans will insert themselves into situations based on their self-interest around the world. Canada doesn't do it. Look at things like gun ownership. Look at things, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem the way
the gun thing's huge, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, let us know what you think. If you think, we're out to lunch, or if you think we're bang on, we'd love to hear from you. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. That's exactly where insurance lawyer X sent this email, and I've promised to not reveal their identity. But Insurance Lawyer X was paying attention to our May 9th episode. That's when we talked to pollster Nick Nanos and Jenny McCordy from the Canadian Bar Association. She's a lawyer. They're the ones that the Canadian Bar Association commissioned this study. They did some polling with Nanos Research on how Albertans feel about these changes to the auto insurance system. This is coming up in they say about January 2027. So we'll see what happens. About a year and a half from now. Approximately, Alberta plans to move to a no-fault insurance system, and polling shows that about 20% of Albertans are convinced that this is a good thing. About 80% of Albertans are concerned that it's actually going to cost you more for car insurance, and it's going to take away the rights that you have, the rights that you've cherished, like the right to sue in case of an injury accident. You can check out the full episode. I encourage you to do so on the 9th of May. Obviously, the conversation is not over. The research was just out. We want to talk to the pollster and the person that commissioned it, but Insurance Lawyer X writes in and says, listen, I'm a lawyer in private practice with more than 2 decades of direct experience in Alberta auto insurance law. I know what I'm talking about. To be clear, my own pecuniary interest and that of the firm I work for is in maintaining the status quo system of fault-based auto insurance. It's a bread and butter thing. But I have to respond to some of the oversimplified information that Nick Nanos and Jenny McCordy shared on your May 9th episode, because contrary to what they would have us believe, the proposed no-fault system is not clearly inferior to the existing system. And the existing system does not accomplish the things that they say highlighted as its most important features. Insurance Lawyer X says this is a complex issue, and there's a lot to say about it, including all the situations where the current fault-based system leaves Albertans injured without compensation. But that'll have to wait. For now, I want to focus my remarks on one aspect: the notion that Albertans value being able to sue the at-fault driver so as to hold them legally and financially accountable. Both Nanos and McCordy emphasized this on your show, Ryan. Clearly, the data supports this is a widely and firmly held belief in the public, and I do not question that. But it is a belief based in myth and misunderstanding about the workings of the existing system, which by design rarely holds drivers legally and financially accountable in any meaningful sense, regardless of how it may feel to the injured person who's hiring a lawyer and suing them. Let me explain. Insurance lawyer says, with respect to holding bad drivers legally responsible, is a driver being held legally responsible for causing injury if they are unaware that it is happening? Of the thousands of injury-causing car accidents in Alberta every year, most of them do not involve the at-fault driver having any awareness that the insurance claim, or the injury claim rather, is holding them accountable. Most claims are settled without a lawsuit and without any admission of fault by the driver. Even if there is a lawsuit, which is a statistical minority, the driver's usually minimally involved in the proceedings, especially if their fault is clear, because their insurance company that's going to pay the claim doesn't waste its time contesting who's at fault in the accident. That's because the auto liability insurer's job is to settle the claim of the injured person and to close the file. Most of the time, once they've reported the accident to their insurance company, the driver will likely never hear another word about this claim. It's hardly holding them legally responsible. Legal accountability is why we have the criminal code. It's why we have the Traffic Safety Act, driving offenses, so that law enforcement can hold drivers legally accountable for wrongdoing on the roads. The purpose of an injured person suing an at-fault driver is to secure compensation. That's a completely different purpose. And with respect to holding bad drivers financially responsible, says insurance lawyer X, the whole purpose of auto liability insurance in the current system is that drivers do not feel the financial responsibility for accidents they cause. If the injury claim is worth less than $1 million and the driver has liability insurance limits of $1 million, which is typical, they don't face any personal financial responsibility. Their insurance company does. Cases where the claim is worth more than the insurance limits of the driver are relatively rare. And in these cases, the driver may feel the sting of financial responsibility, but more likely, or just as likely, the injured person will just end up with a claim that they can never collect because the driver may not have assets or income against which to enforce judgment. This is not making the other driver financially responsible. Often, an increase in auto insurance premiums is the only way that the at-fault driver feels the sting of financial responsibility. Johnny and you and I talked about this, about rates going up as a result of accidents or tickets. But that's not unique to the status quo system. There's no reason that a no-fault system can't accomplish the same goal. So what really does it mean to say that we value holding at-fault drivers legally and financially responsible for injuries they've caused? It's understandable that the injured plaintiff thinks that because the driver's name is on the lawsuit filed by their lawyer. The driver is being held responsible. In reality, the existing system usually keeps that driver out of the proceedings whenever possible. And in most cases, the driver's not paying any damages. Their insurance company is. In most cases, the driver, unless responsibility for the accident is in dispute, is barely aware or completely unaware of the legal proceedings against them. Now, Jenny McCordy was correct when she called CBA Alberta a lobby group. Okay, that's the Canadian Bar Association. That is what it is. And in this case, it's lobbying for the livelihood of lawyers with personal injury and insurance practices. Ryan here, we did clarify that right out of the gates. That's obvious and it's relevant. Back to insurance lawyer. Says it's not an academic or public interest think tank dispensing objective information about the pros and cons of no-fault auto insurance versus the status quo fault-based system. Now that it has polling data that shows that large numbers of Albertans value holding bad drivers legally and financially accountable, is it too much to expect that CBA Alberta might embark on a public education campaign to help Albertans understand why the existing system is not accomplishing that goal, something that might help Albertans better understand the true relative merits of the fault-based and no-fault systems? Respectfully, Insurance Lawyer X. I thought that was a good one to talk at ryanjesperson.com. We did also have people writing in and saying, a lot of the live chatters, we sure appreciate you, those in the live chat. They were saying, they were professing their love for, their affinity for, their desire to see something that would more follow the lines of what they're doing in BC and Saskatchewan with SGI and ICBC.
Yeah.
People are writing in saying, those are no-fault systems. So either you want it or you don't.
Yeah. And I didn't mind. I will say that, living in BC, ICB, it's quick and fast. Like everything's done in one place. You go in, you stand in a line. They do your insurance for you. Like I admit, there are some ups to it, but I'm just not sure that I trust the government, especially, I'll just say it, this government to handle it right now. What do you think?
Well, I just think that right now, Gosh, number one, I think that the main story that I look at right now with this provincial government is that there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. I think that the general public is being flooded with information on purpose. I think that's a governance strategy. I think that the things that are gleaning the most headlines right now in Alberta are not the issues that are most important to Albertans. And I know that I sound like I'm just banging the same drum here to the point where we're going to put the drumstick through the skin. But it's like, there are major issues in healthcare, major issues. Right now, obviously, there's a looming teachers strike that we will be talking about as this, materializes or does not. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot happening right now. And I think that there is a scenario right now, and it isn't always the case in politics, but right now I think you have folks that are backing this government and backing this premier to the point where it doesn't matter what she says or what she's doing. They're going to support her. I think that there's critics of hers that no matter what she says or does, if this government were to do something positive or good, they would not recognize it because ideologically they inherently oppose this government no matter what. And then I think generally speaking, there's some skepticism surrounding this government for obvious reasons, including the fact that this alleged AHS procurement scandal is being investigated by the RCMP.
Sure.
And if it does prove, and by the way, these investigations can take years, right? We found out, months ago that the RCMP had concluded its investigation into the Jason Kenney leadership campaign for the PCs. Do you know what I mean? Like people are like,
no one cares anymore.
Well, because Jason Kenney's already won the leadership, brought the parties together, won the election, and then was forced out. So who even kind of gives a rip about where that investigation was at right now? So I do think, though, that the elephant in the room is that there is a question. There are major questions around the credibility and the integrity of this government.
100%.
And it may prove to be that all of the procurement was above board and everything's perfectly fine and it's business as usual. But like Ken Bosenkool was saying, like longtime conservative strategist Ken Bosenkool was saying on this show just a short time ago, the Friday after the federal election, last time we talked to him, he said, this government may not be guilty, but it sure is acting like it is.
Yeah.
And so in that case, when you start talking to get around to, sometimes it takes me 5 or 10 minutes to answer your question.
No, I like it. I'm on the journey.
To answer your question about whether or not people believe or trust in this government to make major changes to the auto insurance regime, I think a lot of people, for fair and good reason, are wondering, what's the motivation behind it? Is the motivation behind it to actually save the average person money, or is it to benefit insurance companies?
100%. And I think what you just said there, another point is like, even if you're backing this government, even if you fully support it, do you think they can handle all these major changes at once? Like, let's throw auto insurance in there as well as like revamping education, energy, the separation stuff, our healthcare system, CPP. Like, this is too many things at once. You know what I mean? Nobody can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know what you think to this. Talk at RyanJesperson.com. You can always hit us up on our social channels as well. Thanks to everybody that follows us on X and Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. You can, of course, watch this show courtesy of California Closets live streaming on LinkedIn and Facebook and X every single morning as well. And I want to get to something. This is an important point to make as we shout out to our real VIP member, Reed Clark. You can learn more about YouTube memberships on our YouTube channel. Reed Clark, did you see over the weekend announcing his candidacy?
I saw this.
Yeah, he's running for council.
He is,
in Ward Nakota Isga. He's the current CEO of Sport Edmonton, former CEO of the Edmonton Stingers.
Yeah.
And pretty exciting. Packed house there at the Glenora Community Hall as Reed Clark announced his candidacy for city council. I don't typically offer political endorsements.
Okay.
I think as a talk show host, it's important to like kind of, as they would say, keep your powder dry, pick your spots. But I will say proudly that I am not a resident of that ward. But if I was, I would be voting for Reed Clark because I think that that guy is going to bring something incredible to city council. You will not meet a bigger community champion than that guy. So a shout out to him. But we've got a big shout out coming to a particular group. And this could be right here in the province of Alberta, our home province, or across the country and around the world. Before we get there, I want to make sure that UCAN Youth Services is on your radar. We are so proud to be partnering with this nonprofit, a charitable organization dedicated to helping people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They do that in a number of different ways. Their Relentless Outreach Program, you can learn more about that at ucan.ca. They're working with vulnerable 12 to 17-year-olds, ones that are in and out of juvie, ones that are in and out of handcuffs, quite frankly, but they're not giving up on these young people. In fact, they're providing incredible opportunities for them to plug back into the education or employment scenarios that will benefit them most. And then for the young adults, the 18 to 24-year-olds, they've got the Verto Project and the Road to Work program. These are paid opportunities. These are programs that'll deliver employability workshops, industry-focused safety training, as an example, in the Road to Work program that'll prepare successful candidates for entry-level positions in the construction, road building, or traffic safety industries. UCAN partners with employers to roll out and deliver this Road to Work program. You earn while you learn. When these are young adults, like learning how to basic stuff, like run power tools, how do you run a saw, how do you actually, like basic stuff, right? Safety training.
Yeah.
How do you drive a forklift? Like a lot of people, I don't know, man. When I get around a saw,
You
I'm
need a
always
license.
all I can picture is those movie scenes where someone like runs their thumb through the saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here at UCAN, they've got these amazing opportunities working with industry to help 18 to 25-year-olds desire to start a career in the construction industry and then make it happen. It starts with 5 weeks of training, Monday to Friday. You're then graduated, and then that's when your real life, real world experience begins. If you know a young adult that would be a perfect fit for this, I implore you to have them check out UCAN Youth Services at ucan.ca. All right. Every week, the first episode of every week, our friends at Solar by Kuby encourage us. No, they demand that we take a second to focus on the positivity, to harness positive energy, to renew our faith in humanity. It's Positive Reflections, proudly presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. And John, I had an entire story to tell today. We had an email from Brenda who told us about something that she witnessed this weekend. But Brenda, and thank you for sharing with us to talk at RyanJesperson.com, what you witnessed there at the dog park, is an evergreen story. It will be just as wonderful to hear next week. And we're bumping it. We're bumping it because I saw something in our live chat out of the gates as we started doing this show, and I want to give a shout out to Kathy and to MA and to others who let us know that today is Nurses Day.
Oh, okay.
It's Nurses Day today on the 12th of May. And I think every single one of us, and if you can't think of a time that a nurse contributed to your comfort, your happiness, your good health, perhaps helped you and your family through a very difficult time, perhaps did some of that unglamorous grunt work that you could never see yourself doing in the line of work, somebody that went above and beyond, that attitude of servant leadership, that attitude of community contribution. We all have a story involving nurses. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, what would mine be? If nothing else, it was that day that your mama welcomed you to planet Earth and nurses were there to help make it happen. In our family, nurses have been there through the highs and the lows, the strikes and the gutters. And every single time that we have interacted with the healthcare system, I have watched nurses operate. I've watched them work. And I thought, gosh, we're lucky to have people that are willing to step into these high-pressure, demanding situations and scenarios. The healthcare space is a difficult one. It takes an emotional toll. It takes a physical toll. There are thankless hours. You put up with abuse. You put up with folks that never saw themselves in a difficult situation and now could use some counsel. And it's not always just the healthcare delivery. Sometimes it's the emotional supports. Sometimes it's the little things. And so on this Nurses Day, on behalf of Real Talkers, Kathy and MA and others who punched this into the chat, we thank you, the nurses and other healthcare professionals that show up every single day to ensure that our system and our society functions the way that it needs to function. If you know a nurse, make sure you send them a note today. Thank them for what they do. And if you are a nurse, from all of us, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know you don't get enough thanks. We know you don't see the gratitude as often as you deserve it. May this be our love letter to you, the nurses, on Nurses Day. Positive Reflections is proudly presented by Solar by Kuby. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting kuby.ca. We'll be back at it Next episode of Real Talk coming up in the next 24 hours. As mentioned, I'm going to be joining Markham Hislop on Tuesday. Should be a good one. There will be no show this Wednesday as we're headed out to Nisku to host the 2025 Nisku Energy Show. We're back at it Thursday and Friday with episodes you won't want to miss. Make it a great Monday, friends. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.